Hi there. I am the CRM Ninja, and on today's episode of The Oops Factor, I have Elaiza Benitez. Welcome to the show, Elaiza.
Thanks, EY.
It is wonderful to have you here, although we are on totally opposite sides of the world.
Yeah, we are. I'm based all the way in New Zealand. So I live in the capital city, which is known as Wellington. We are the windy capital of New Zealand, basically. And
Ah,
if you've never flown into New Zealand, well, Wellington specifically, you never know what's going to happen because on a day where it's really windy, yeah, the skilled pilot has to land carefully. some some people who arrive in Wellington for the first time, and if it is a windy day, they get put off by it. They're like, "Whoa, what is this?" But it's normal.
I hear that would be interesting to experience. I know in the old Kai Tak airport in Hong Kong, which is no longer used, they used to come in flying. They used to aim at the mountain. They used to aim at the
Aim at the
side of it.
mountain.
They used to aim into Hong Kong. There was a bit of rock that was coming up, and they used to aim at it, and then they used to very sharply turn, and then fly
Wow.
essentially through the buildings. And people who are not familiar with it would be like, "You're gonna crash! You're gonna crash!" Experienced pilots. Where would we be without them?
Yeah, exactly. I guess one can say the same for experienced consultants. Ah.
Experienced consultants. That is true. That is very true. But speaking of experience, the reason I have this lovely produce as my background is I understand that you have recently taken up experience of growing your own vegetables and fruits and
Yeah,
stuff in a
yeah,
in your own garden.
I have. So when I moved back to New Zealand, which was towards the end of 2019, before I knew a pandemic was around the corner, I planted some tomatoes
Okay.
and and over the course of I think 2 months, it just produced a lot. And then last year I tried another type of tomato and that grew. So then this year, not only am I trying more tomatoes, I'm trying more produce. So I've got these carrots. They're called roly polies. And I think it's because rather than growing, you know, vertical, it's like a round ball. It's the
Oh,
name roly
are
poly.
they like these little round carrots, like little
Yeah.
baldy carrots? We
Yeah.
just planted some,
Oh,
and I'm
really?
looking at
Oh,
it
cool.
because we have a vegetable garden here. My wife has done it. It's a lockdown project, and
Yeah.
I'm looking at this carrot thinking that does not look like a carrot.
Well, that's the thing. I think why I was drawn to this particular type of carrot was I've never seen it before. I never tried one before. So I was like, okay, I'll give it a go. So that was the first trip to the place that sells what you call, I don't know if they're called seedlings. Maybe they are called seedlings where they're
Yeah,
kind of sprouted already and then you just put them in
seedlings.
your garden bed. So got roly poly carrots, got wildfire chili, which I'm really excited about.
Ooh,
Got butter beans, leeks, and then I believe snap peas. But then recently on the weekend, I went back to the shop because I needed to get more indoor soil for my black
okay.
rubber night plant, which I've called Christian Bale, by the way. Haha, get it? Black Knight.
Ooh,
and while I was there, I was like, okay, I might as well check out the produce section. So I did. And they had more tomatoes and specials. So this time I picked up three new ones. So the first one is called a pear drop tomato. So it's yellow and it grows in the shape of a pear. I don't know. That's what it looks like from the
okay.
photo. And then the second one is a black heirloom tomato. So I'm really excited about that because I've never seen a black tomato. And then the third tomato is, I don't know, it's I can't remember what it is, but apparently it's supposed to produce 100 in its life, if that makes sense. So we'll
Okay.
see. So
So
who knows? I might be overgrowing tomatoes this summer, but hey, I'm I figured, well, if I've done it for the last 2 years, I'm sure I'll get some crop out of this. So we'll see what happens.
from the sound of it, it sounds like you are a professional tomato grower. Um,
No,
what do you do with all of these tomatoes and with the other vegetables that you grow?
well, I guess I'll find out because I've never grown this much before. I mean, the last 2 years have only been tomatoes.
Okay.
And in that time, I just ate them raw with
Oh,
my
okay.
salads. So this year, if I do have a lot, then I guess I have to share the love with some friends and family. But
Or you could cook, because I know you like cooking.
Yeah, I do. I do. So, fun fact about me for those of you who haven't listened to the podcast episode with Mark Christie and Alison Mulligan, I think we did it last year. I'm actually vegan. So, I went vegan 3 years ago now. So, yeah, this is my third year. And
Nice.
it's been good. Yeah. It was a decision that I made, and I knew it was one that I would make eventually. And that's because over the years, I've learned, where our food comes from, really, and then B, I've also have always had an affection towards animals, and so one summer when I was still living in Melbourne, I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to it, and I did, and I haven't gone back since. So, but it was a gradual lead up to being vegan. And when I say gradual, it was because at one point I stopped eating red meat, and I was only eating meat when I was going out, like catching it with friends, or it was, some social event through a conference. I would eat meat, but I wouldn't cook it at home. And then if I did eat meat, eventually I had become a pescetarian. So a pescetarian are people who eat only, seafood and veggies, but they don't eat chicken or meat or any other type of four-legged animal, basically.
Right.
And then I went vegetarian for I think 2 months, and then I tried to go back to eating meat because in Melbourne each year they have this thing called the night noodle market. So it's beside a river, and it's just this beautiful setup. There's like different not stages, but different areas of cuisine, and there's bands and live music playing, and it's just a really cool vibe. And so at that point, I try to eat one of the outdoor street market stall foods. So it was a fried chicken bao from this very popular place in Melbourne called Chin Chin. It's this restaurant. And I tried to eat it, but I couldn't. Like I took a couple of bites, and I just didn't feel comfortable anymore. And that's when I knew that I was going to commit to going vegan full time. And the only reason I went vegetarian was because at that point I was still eating cheese, but I wasn't eating things like yogurt. I stopped eating yogurt quite a few years ago. And then things like milk, I was already having plant-based milk. It wasn't cow milk. And
these things take stages. I know people have taken on very rapidly, and then it hasn't worked out. So that sounds good. So going from growing lots of tomatoes along with other stuff and veganism, what do you have to share with us for the Oops Factor today?
I thought I would talk about, I suppose, the journey of moving countries. I don't know if people have openly spoken about that in our line of work or in other podcasts. But what I mean by that is when you have lived in a country for so long, and then one day you make the decision to move outside of the country that you've been living in for, I guess, most of your life, and move to a completely different country. Because it is scary, but at the same time, it's really cool and exciting. And so I thought, hey, maybe we could talk about that, because I know that there's people who are always wanting to leave their country to a different country to have, let's say, a better life for themselves or for their kids or something like that. So I thought I'd talk about it. Yeah.
So what made you decide to move country?
So I moved to New Zealand in the year 2000, and
sorry,
you're laughing.
No. It says that the reason I'm laughing there was the song by Busted, The Year 3000, came to mind at that point when you said that. That was all.
Okay. I thought, I don't know, I thought you were going to make some age-related joke, but It's all
Oh,
good.
no, not at all.
So at that point, I moved to New Zealand with my family, with my mom and dad, and then I went to school here. I did my university degree here. I got my first corporate job here, and in that company, and so it's a Microsoft partner in New Zealand. I was with that company for over 4 years. And in that time, I had two roles. So, first of all, I was a sales administrator in the sales team.
Okay.
And then eventually I wanted to move on from it. And the story behind it is that there was a project at the time that was with a government agency. And when that project went live, so it was a bespoke project, it had nothing to do with Dynamics 365 or Dynamics CRM, which is what it was known back then. And they needed help. But it was the type of project where a lot of partners or vendors were involved. And when it went live, it was how do I say it?
Less than ideal.
They weren't yeah, pretty much. They weren't ready. And a lot of things were removed from the project budget. And one of them was the training. And so when it went live, their call center received like a large volume of calls, but the education part in terms of both the call center and the customers, the organizations that were essentially submitting their data to this bespoke system, they didn't get a lot of information back then as well, because there were so many things that needed to be cut from the project budget in order for this thing to go live and exist. So no one wanted to go there. And then the managed services manager for that particular client at the time said, "Hey, Elaiza, I know you want to get out of sales. Do you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yes, I'll do it. Like, I'll take it." Like, no one else wanted to go there. Said I wanted to change. So I was like, "Yeah, bring it on. I'll take it." And yeah, it was a very you could feel the tension there. But me being me, I was younger. I was just this bundle of energy, and three, I just wanted to help. So I think a combination of those three made them feel comfortable. And then from there, I did about like a year and a half with them, because they wanted me to stay on board for an enhancements piece of work for that particular bespoke system, which I did. And then once that was finished, I then went back to the office, in terms of the office for the Microsoft partner. And they were like, "Oh, why don't you just join our team full time?" So I did. So then I transitioned out of sales. I joined the managed services team. I was supporting New Zealand and Australian customers. I had quite a few customers on each week, because, support tickets or enhancements come left, right, and center.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was like, "Oh, I want to move on from this role now. I want to learn more. I want to know what it's like to work on the delivery side," because I was in the managed services side. In other words, supporting customers once a system has gone live, or you pick up a system or an application from a different Microsoft partner. And at the time, the person who was leading the delivery practice said they didn't have roles. And eventually I clicked on with, I don't think I could stay here in terms of my career development. If I stay, I don't think I'm going to have the opportunity to move on to the delivery team. So then I went to Australia for my 25th birthday, and the city that I went to was Melbourne. And this was my second time in Melbourne, and I really enjoyed it. And I was like, "Oh, I could live and work here." So at the same time, before I left New Zealand, I organized some interviews. So basically, there was a recruiter that approached me on LinkedIn, I guess in the last eight months. So he was recruiting for roles both in New Zealand and Australia. And it was funny because in the previous year, so before my 25th birthday, I was going to go ahead with another Microsoft partner in New Zealand, but I decided not to progress with that one for certain reasons. And then when I hit him up again saying, "Hey, I'm going to be in Melbourne for my 25th birthday. I'm there for 5 days. Can I possibly meet with some companies there?" And he said, "Yeah, sure. Let me organize some." So he organized 3 for me. One I organized for myself. And after speak to all of them, literally 3 hours before I was due to fly back to Wellington, I had 2 offers and I accepted
Nice.
one of them. And I accepted one of them based on my conversation with the delivery practice manager as well as the other colleagues, so the solution architect at the time. And I chose them because I felt like, so, okay, for me, relationships are very important. And
Yeah.
if I feel that the person who is going to be the one that I'm going to be working with is, you get a good vibe, you
I know exactly what
converse
you mean
in,
by that.
in conversation well. So I went with them because of that feeling, and had zero regrets.
So did you actually then fly back to Wellington, or did you stay there?
No, I accepted the offer. I then flew back to Wellington. I went to work the next day. I pretty much resigned, and then within 4 weeks, I was on a plane to Melbourne. So I pretty much did a half day on a Friday, packed the rest of my stuff on the Friday evening, woke up really early because it was a 6 a.m. flight to Melbourne.
Wow.
Landed in Melbourne at around 8 a.m. I had my former friend from high school who now lives there pick me up from the airport. We had breakfast, and because I'm so planning in advance, I had already set up 11 apartment viewings. Crazy.
You're very organized.
Yeah, and then at the end of that day, on my first day in Melbourne, I pretty much crashed, but it was good. Yeah.
So, having moved to New Zealand at some point in your teens, I'm assuming, by what you said, and then several years later, moving then to Melbourne to work, and then you were in Melbourne for a while, right?
Yeah, so I was there for over 6 years, and then decided to come back to New Zealand. It was funny because I had originally planned to be there for 2 years, and I was enjoying it too much. Enjoying it in terms of both the work, my career development, and the lifestyle that I had in Australia. And I look back on it fondly, and I'm glad I did it. And it's something I recommend to anyone, no matter what stage you are in your life. If you have the opportunity to do it, just do it. And
so the opportunity in general, not specifically to go to Melbourne.
Yeah, as in live and work in a different country if you can, because I think it's a really cool way of immersing yourself into a country's culture, as well as knowing what you can do outside of your comfort zone, and
that is true.
being independent as well. Yeah.
So looking back on this, obviously people wonder about, working somewhere else within their own country, depending on the size of the country. I mean, in the UK, you could go to work in another city. In America, East Coast to West Coast is a decent move. And that's just within the same country, leaving aside other countries. What would you say, in your experience, would be the top 3 challenges when considering something like this? And how would you say, obviously, the classical consultancy answer, it would depend as to what the answer would be, but what would you say would be the general way of approaching and looking at it?
Well, the first thing that you need to do is decide, do I really want to move, and why do I want to move? And once you get over that bit, then your mind is pretty much committed, because that was what happened in my experience. And then the first challenge is putting aside the work challenges, just thinking about the logistics, is getting rid of your items, or knowing where you can store them. So before I left
stuff,
I was in a mad rush to sell a majority of my items. So I sold my car, sold my things like a TV and the TV entertainment unit, sold a lot of my cookingware, or I gave them to my sister or other friends that needed it, and things like outdoor patio furniture. We had like a small table and chair. So it's things like that, because the more that you can get rid of, the more you don't have to worry about. And for the items that I did want to keep, I kept them at my parents' house, because I knew that I would be moving back one day. But the hilarious thing is, you come back and you go through your items and you think, why did I keep this.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. When I moved back to New Zealand, I pretty much went through a cleanse of items that I kept at my parents' place and got rid of it even more. And then the other challenge is closing down your accounts. I'm going to call them accounts. So things like your health insurance, your phone plan, your power bills, and your internet broadband bill. All of those things, like closing that off. And then the third one is understanding what are you going to do for the first month when you move into a new country. In other words, where are you going to stay? How are you going to get around? Do you have any friends there that can help you, or is there family there as well? So in Melbourne, I didn't have any family, but I knew people who had already moved there, and two of them were friends from high school, and another one was a friend from university days as well. So I pretty much stayed with one of my friends from high school for 2 weeks, and when I finally found the apartment that I wanted to move into, as well as I ended up living there my whole time in Melbourne, it was pretty much just easy to put all my stuff together and move to that apartment. So that really helps in terms of knowing if you've got friends or family there. I think maybe if I didn't know anyone there, it could have been a lot more stressful or hard. So I know that the Microsoft partner that I first worked for in New Zealand, they had what you call relocation fees, relocation coverage. So in other words, if you moved from the UK, and that still applies, by the way. So anyone who's listening from the UK, if you want to move over to New Zealand, this particular Microsoft partner company will cover relocation fees, but I think it's different now that there's COVID. So some companies will do that. But in my case, I was working for like a smaller, medium-sized consultancy boutique company, and they didn't offer that. So I would have had to find my own accommodation to stay in, for the first month until I found my apartment. But the interesting thing is I didn't do my homework beforehand in terms of what you actually need when you need to rent an apartment in a different country. And
paperwork.
And the first apartment that I really wanted, but it turned out it was in the same building that I actually ended up living in. I really wanted this particular apartment, but I didn't know that there was so much criteria as well as documentation that you had to provide. So by the time I had put that together, the apartment was already taken. And I told the real estate agent, I said, hey, I really, really like this building. If any other apartments become available, can you please let me know? And then 4 days later, they rang me back and they said, someone has just pulled out of this particular apartment in the same building. If you have a look at it this afternoon, we can give it to you, because by law in the state of Victoria in Australia, you have to look at an apartment before you can sign the lease agreement. And so that was that. But
you had all your paperwork in order.
Yeah, by that time I did. And out of that learning of moving to Melbourne, I actually wrote a list of here are the things that you need to do before you arrive in Australia. And I've sent that list to so many friends over the years that were moving to New Zealand, moving to Australia, whether it was from New Zealand or the UK. And a lot of them have been like, oh my God, this has been so helpful. Thank you so much. Because no one did that for me. I figured things out on my own. And so I figured, well, I can pay it forward by sharing it or passing it on to friends or even friends of friends who are moving to Australia and need to know what you have to get set up, basically. Yeah.
I think that's so wonderful. And I think that those tips are, really important. Make sure that the life, wherever you're leaving, you've got all that structure in order. Make sure ideally you have some structures to where you're going. If there is no structure there already for you, then, understand what you're going to get up to provide that structure and start getting you going. So Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing that.
Yeah, thanks. I could probably talk about it for longer, but yeah, all good.
we can catch up. We can catch up another time. I look forward to hearing more details. Viewers, we hope that you have found this interesting. If you are considering moving to that side of the Western Hemisphere, and especially if you're going to Australia, feel free to hit up Elaiza to ask her for a list of
yeah,
what to do
I'll help
and
you
how
out.
to get prepared. Feel free to check out the rest of the Oops Factor playlist, subscribe to the channel, and take a look at the blog. And if you would like to come on and share your own Oops Factor story, hit the link in the description below that should be appearing somewhere, fill in your details, and I'd love to have you on the show. But above all, have an amazing day.